they have discovered several pillars, enormous structures underneath the Great Pyramid, kilometers deep into the earth.
Yeah, that was crazy.
It's really crazy.
Beneath the Great Pyramid, something is moving, and it should not exist. New scans have exposed hidden chambers and impossible structures pulsing deep under the Giza Plateau.
I think the heart of that structure is the subterranean chamber, which is 100 feet vertically beneath the base of the Great Pyramid.
This is incredible.
Scientists now believe the ancients weren't preserving their dead at all. They were imprisoning something alive, something they feared enough to bury beneath millions of tons of stone.
If you scaled up this experiment to the full size of the pyramid, Cadman believes the system would have created a heartbeat-like vibration that shook the entire structure.
In my opinion, is the most important discovery on the 21st century.
The L-shaped gateway beneath the pyramid. The discovery began quietly, but what scientists uncovered beneath the Giza Plateau soon caused unease among everyone involved. Between 2021 and 2023, a joint research team from Higashi Nippon University, Tohoku University, and Egypt's National Research Institute of Astronomy and Geophysics carried out a new geophysical survey in the area known as the Giza West Field. This region had long been considered well understood. It was believed to hold only small tombs called mastabas, built for officials and workers who served the pharaohs of the 4th dynasty. No one expected anything unusual beneath it.
God, look at this. Oh my goodness.
Amazing.
That assumption changed when ground-penetrating radar and electrical resistivity tomography detected a buried structure that seemed far too precise to be natural. At a depth of roughly 6.5 feet, the instruments revealed a perfectly shaped L-form measuring about 33 by 49 feet. The radar map showed right-angled corners so exact that no random fracture could explain them. One branch of the formation ended abruptly in a dense zone that produced unusually strong reflections. Analysts said this area might represent a collapsed stone door deliberately packed with sand and rubble to conceal an entrance. A few early scans even produced brief metallic echoes, unlike the signal that limestone normally gives. The team repeated the tests several times, but the anomaly remained. When plotted on the site grid, the structure pointed directly toward the western base of the Great Pyramid. The alignment appeared intentional, suggesting that whoever built it wanted the feature to interact with the larger monument. Scholars noted that in early hieroglyphics, the L shape symbolized reversal, or the Gate of the Dead, a mark used to show the boundary between the physical world and the afterlife. Ancient funerary writings also described hidden doors buried in sand through which spirits could travel unseen. During subsequent scans, the readings grew stranger. The returning signals no longer behaved like static reflections. They pulsed at regular intervals, creating a pattern that technicians compared to a faint heartbeat. Some believed it was interference from power lines, but the rhythm persisted even when equipment was run on isolated generators. Electromagnetic sweeps also showed short bursts of feedback that could not be traced to any external source. It gave the unsettling impression that the buried stone was somehow reacting to the energy directed at it. Workers at the site began to speak of odd experiences. A few said their compasses spun without reason, and that watches stopped when they stood over the marked coordinates. Others swore they felt a low vibration in the ground, a kind of trembling that came and went. When digital imaging software reconstructed the underground shape in 3 dimensions, the L form appeared slightly bent at the center, resembling the curve of a human arm extending from the sand as if reaching upward. Whether coincidence, equipment error, or something more, the sensation among the researchers was the same. The object below did not behave like dead stone.
So that the pyramid, the very thing that was meant to protect the king and ensure his resurrection, would not collapse and crush his mortal remains.
The L-shaped formation appeared to lead downward, toward a deeper void that instruments had only begun to glimpse. Whatever lay beneath that bend promised to challenge everything scientists thought they knew about Giza's ancient burial grounds. The chamber that shouldn't be there. When the radar arrays were pushed deeper beneath the L-shaped gateway, the results startled everyone on the team. At a depth of roughly 33 feet, the instruments began returning signals that formed a perfect cube. The void measured about 33 feet on each side, its geometry far too regular to have been created by erosion or fracture. The researchers called it the chamber, though no one could explain how such a space could have been carved into the brittle limestone that supports the Western Cemetery. For a 4th dynasty structure, its existence was mechanically impossible. The ground-penetrating radar produced cross-sections that showed alternating bands of material, like the layers of a stack rather than a single empty pocket. The pattern did not behave like open air or soil. Some of the reflections looked metallic, while others seemed to absorb energy altogether. Thermal cameras were then aimed at the area above the coordinates. They detected cold spots that shifted position from night to night, suggesting either trapped air currents or some form of active energy exchange. Archaeologists had never seen such readings at any Egyptian site. The combination of heat irregularities and electromagnetic interference made it difficult to maintain stable instrument calibration. Structural engineers on the project quickly realized that nothing in known ancient architecture could account for this. The limestone at that depth is fragile and prone to collapse, yet the void appeared completely intact. To dig and reinforce such a space without modern tools would require precise knowledge of stress distribution, which is not documented anywhere in Old Kingdom construction. Some began to suspect the chamber was far older than the surrounding necropolis, built by unknown hands and later buried by dynastic builders who never understood what they were standing on. As the work progressed, new problems appeared. The tomography equipment recorded a constant vibration near 20 Hz, a frequency just below the threshold of human hearing that can sometimes cause unease, nausea, and a feeling of pressure in the skull. It was too low to hear, but everyone working close to the instruments felt it in their bodies as a pressure behind the ears. The data loggers captured the pulse continuously for hours, even when the machines were switched to standby. Technicians checked for ordinary sources of interference, such as surface equipment or power supplies operating at the field station several hundred meters away, but none produced the same frequency. The vibration did not register on any of the control instruments above ground. It seemed to come from directly beneath the chamber itself. During computer reconstruction of the scan data, a disturbing event occurred. A 3D modeling program briefly rendered what looked like the outline of a standing figure inside the void. When the file was refreshed, the figure disappeared completely, leaving only the hollow cube. The technicians explained it as a rendering glitch caused by corrupted depth data, but the image spread quietly among the staff. The fleeting appearance of something shaped like a person made several members uneasy. That brief appearance changed how several members of the team looked at the discovery. They began to ask whether the chamber had been designed for a normal burial at all. Egyptian tombs always contained objects of the dead, sarcophagi, offerings, carvings, but this void showed no sign of ornament or passageways that would allow ceremonial access. It was sealed from every side, as if meant to isolate whatever was within. The accidental rendering of a figure seemed to reinforce that thought. To some, it looked less like a memorial space and more like a cell intended to hold something upright, enclosed and permanent. Local laborers soon gave the place a new name, El Bab al-Maut, meaning Gate of Death. Old villagers recalled an ancient warning carved on temple walls that spoke of the hollow under the west, which, if opened, would unleash disorder upon the living. Whether superstition or intuition, that phrase began to feel uncomfortably relevant. The deeper the scans reached, the more the data hinted at connections radiating outward from this cube toward the pyramids themselves. What first appeared to be an isolated cavity was forming the outline of a much larger network buried beneath Giza, one that no one could yet comprehend. The 38,000-year-old city buried under Giza. The first two discoveries, the L-shaped gateway and the chamber beneath it, had already unsettled everyone involved. But when the data from the Italian and Japanese radar teams were combined, the picture that formed below the Giza Plateau stopped being a collection of anomalies. It looked like a city. At depths, ranging from 50 to 120 feet, the radar surveys began showing patterns that no geological process could explain. Rows of perfectly spaced columns appeared in spiral formations stretching almost 2,000 feet from east to west. Between them ran corridors or hollow channels that connected the three main pyramids, Khufu, Khafra, and Menkaure, into one vast subterranean grid. The teams ran verification scans multiple times, expecting the patterns to vanish as equipment errors, but they reappeared in the same positions each time. When the data were processed through artificial intelligence modeling software, the structures displayed a geometry identical to the fractal ratios used in sacred Egyptian art. These were precise, repeating mathematical patterns that could not have occurred naturally. Even more disturbing was what the astronomers on the team discovered. The entire network aligned perfectly with the constellation of Orion, but not as it appears in the current sky. The alignment matched Orion's position nearly 39,000 years ago. If that correlation was correct, it would mean the network beneath Giza had been designed long before the first known civilization ever existed. The possibility created uproar among the researchers. Some refused to believe the date, insisting that the data must have been corrupted. Yet sediment samples from the same depths returned carbon values older than 38,000 years. That timeline would place the construction of the underground network tens of thousands of years before agriculture or writing, at a time when humanity was thought to live in caves. The idea contradicted everything archaeologists had accepted about the rise of human society. The physical scale of the construction was equally impossible. The amount of rock that would have to be displaced to build those tunnels rivaled the output of modern tunneling machines. Magnetic readings from the same regions showed patches rich in nickel and iron, suggesting that parts of the structure had been reinforced with metallic elements. Engineers speculated this could have created deliberate electromagnetic properties, possibly to stabilize the vast network or to generate power within it. Then came the most chilling observation. Each pillar emitted a subtle but measurable vibration between 32 and 39 Hz, a frequency range identical to the low end of the human voice. Acoustic engineers hired to analyze the phenomenon said the entire underground grid might function as a resonance system. When the data were played through speakers, the frequencies combined into a pattern that resembled a deep, sustained chant. One radar engineer later admitted off-record that when he listened through the field equipment, he heard what sounded like a chorus answering back. The 20 Hz pulse first recorded above the buried chamber did not fade with distance. When new surveys mapped a wider area, the same rhythmic vibration appeared beneath every section of the plateau. Only its tone had changed. What had begun as a deep subharmonic thrum near the gate of death now broke into multiple frequencies, ranging between 32 and 39 Hz. The discovery convinced the researchers that the earlier signal had been only the first echo of a much larger system hidden beneath the desert, a grid that seemed to hum like a living thing. This further strengthened the team's belief that the pyramids were never meant to honor kings. Perhaps they were not built on top of the buried network to celebrate it, but to lock it away. The discoveries of the buried network and its unnatural resonance led researchers to ask the most difficult question of all. What force could have buried such a vast and precise city beneath tons of limestone and sand? The flooded kingdom of the eldest ones. The answer began to form when geologists joined the project and connected the evidence at Giza with a catastrophe that shook the entire planet more than 12,000 years ago. Dr. James Kennett, a geologist from the University of California, had long argued that a comet impact around 12,800 BCE triggered massive global flooding and ended the Pleistocene epoch. This event, known as the Younger Dryas, caused sea levels to rise and weather systems to collapse. When Kennett's theory was compared with the underground data from Giza, the timelines matched almost exactly. Beneath the plateau, ground-penetrating radar had already revealed subsurface water channels that had no modern geological explanation. Samples taken from core drillings showed salt concentrations identical to those found in the ancient Nile Delta, but dating far older than any Egyptian civilization. These findings suggested that Giza had once been completely submerged. The water now trapped under the plateau could be the last remnant of that forgotten deluge. As the scientists continued to study the radar maps, the physical evidence began to align with the oldest Egyptian myths. The Edfu texts, carved into the temple walls hundreds of miles south of Giza, tell of the eldest ones, a race of divine builders whose island was swallowed by black waters after a serpent of fire fell from the sky.
The Edfu temple is of tremendous importance. As you enter the temple, it's like you're going inside the book. It's literally full of texts.
To many historians, the serpent had always symbolized chaos. Now it seemed to describe a real comet impact that ended their world. In those same inscriptions, Osiris, the god of resurrection, is said to have risen from the black waters of Nun. This phrase, once viewed as metaphorical, suddenly appeared to describe literal floodwaters, the same that might still move beneath the sand today. Modern sonar mapping of those underground water channels produced results that unsettled the entire team. The readings showed moving voids, as if something within the water was shifting position over time. Hydrologists first assumed this was a technical error, but the phenomenon continued across multiple scans. The motion did not follow any known pattern of groundwater movement. The deeper channels seemed to change shape, as though stirred by unseen forces. Some sensors even picked up faint rhythmic vibrations, echoing through the fluid spaces like distant footsteps. These strange signals revived one of Egypt's oldest legends, the voices of the drowned. Ancient texts described murmurs beneath temple floors, believed to be the cries of those lost in the flood. When sonar recordings from the aquifer were analyzed, scientists noticed repeating low-frequency pulses that followed rhythmic intervals. The patterns rose and fell like breathing, creating the eerie illusion of a voice traveling through the water. Although most of the team accepted that it was a resonance effect caused by trapped air pockets in the limestone, a smaller group believed the data hinted at something more complex. The frequencies were not random. They seemed to respond to the subharmonic vibrations already mapped beneath the plateau. This connection between the new acoustic data and the earlier resonance findings suggested that whatever lay below Giza was still active in some form. It was as if the floodwater had not silenced the system, but had become part of it, a conductor that carried its remaining energy. From this, a grim hypothesis emerged. The flood itself might have been used as a weapon. The ancient survivors could have unleashed or redirected the deluge to bury and drown the underground network that once operated beneath the plateau. The immense pressure of the rising waters would have filled every passage and chamber, collapsing entrances, and sealing the entire structure beneath layers of silt and salt. If this interpretation was correct, the flood was not merely a natural disaster, but a deliberate attempt to contain something that could not be destroyed. The survivors might have known that physical force alone could not dismantle what had been built, so they chose to submerge it in an environment that would suffocate its resonance and hide it from later civilizations. To the scientists studying the sonar data, that possibility gave new meaning to the ancient myths of the eldest ones, who vanished beneath black waters. Perhaps they had not simply perished in the flood. Perhaps they had caused it, choosing to sink their world rather than risk whatever waited in the depths of their creation. Beneath those same dark waters, modern radar would detect a new reflection, stronger than anything recorded before. It would turn out to be a sarcophagus-shaped void more than 600 feet below the Earth. The sarcophagus, 650 feet down. The discovery came from an experimental radar survey beneath the tomb of Osiris, one of the deepest explored shafts on the Giza Plateau. Researchers had already mapped 3 descending levels of chambers, the lowest known one resting a little more than 100 feet below the surface. When synthetic aperture radar was directed beyond that depth, it revealed something no one expected. More than 650 feet beneath the ground, the instruments detected a void, shaped unmistakably like a sarcophagus. It was the deepest anomaly ever recorded at Giza. The structure's signal return was unlike ordinary limestone. Instead of a dull echo, the scans produced bright metallic reflections along the edges and crystalline interference patterns at the center. The reading suggested the object was made of a dense composite material, not stone, and perhaps not entirely solid. Its orientation was perfectly aligned along a north-south axis, mirroring the symbolic path of rebirth associated with the god Osiris. The precision left no doubt that the placement had been intentional. Skepticism spread quickly. Critics argued that radar could not possibly penetrate to such a depth through layers of limestone and sand.
Some kind of chemical process went in here, which is very weird.
The research team countered that they were using a new ultra-low frequency array capable of sending long-wave signals hundreds of feet underground. To prove it, they repeated the scan several times using different frequencies. Each time, the same geometry appeared, a coffin-like shape almost 10 feet long and slightly over 3 feet wide. The replication ruled out simple instrument error. When the radar frequency was increased for higher resolution, an even stranger effect occurred. The chamber began emitting faint electromagnetic pulses every 11 seconds, strong enough to register on nearby detectors. The pulses continued even after the transmitter was powered down. Crew members working closest to the equipment complained of nausea and nosebleeds. Others said their instruments shut down for no reason. After several failed attempts to stabilize the readings, the scans were halted. The discovery immediately revived the ancient legend that Osiris slept in the water that renews flesh. The radar image showed the sarcophagus encased in what appeared to be liquid, as though submerged in a natural or artificial reservoir. Priestly warnings inscribed in nearby tombs suddenly took on new meaning. One read, "He who opens the lower tomb shall breathe the breath of death." To some scholars, it now seemed less poetic and more like a literal instruction to never disturb what rested below. Privately, several historians concluded that the sarcophagus might not have been a burial container at all. Its scale and depth suggested a containment vessel, something built to hold a mysterious relic, or perhaps an organism that could not be safely brought to the surface. Some even suspected that ancient priests had known of its presence and constructed their temples directly above to reinforce the seal. Whatever lies in that liquid chamber remains untouched. Modern authorities have since banned any attempt to excavate the site, officially citing preservation. but those close to the project claim the true reason is far more serious. The forbidden excavations and sealed shafts. The deeper the discoveries at Giza became, the tighter the restrictions grew. Excavations that had once been public were suddenly classified, and several areas around the Great Pyramid and the Sphinx were sealed without explanation. To outsiders, it looked like routine preservation, but documents leaked from within Egypt's Ministry of Antiquities told a different story. Internal memoranda allegedly labeled certain zones as Biohazard Level 4, a term normally used for the containment of dangerous pathogens. No official ever confirmed this, yet the phrase appeared repeatedly in correspondence between archaeological departments. It raised the disturbing question of what kind of threat could possibly exist inside ancient stone. The secrecy surrounding Giza had begun decades earlier. In 1935, local newspapers reported the discovery of a secret city beneath the plateau. The story described vast halls and staircases leading down into the bedrock, but within weeks, every mention of it disappeared from public archives. Officials later claimed the reports had been exaggerated, though no record of the expedition team remains. In 1987, a Japanese survey from Waseda University used electromagnetic sounding to map the area around the Sphinx. The team detected multiple cavities and unconnected chambers running beneath the statue's base. When the data were presented, permission for further excavation was abruptly withdrawn, and the results were quietly removed from museum publications. Fieldworkers who have operated near the restricted areas speak of unnerving experiences. They describe sudden gusts of foul, sulfurous air escaping when drills came too close to sealed openings. The smell was so strong that crews were ordered to evacuate until the gas dispersed. Photographs taken by one subcontractor allegedly show steel plates welded across newly exposed shaft entrances. Within days, those same locations were reburied. Two independent researchers who attempted to locate the shafts in 1998 reportedly vanished. Their families told only that the expedition had been terminated for safety reasons. Yet beneath all these restrictions lies one enduring rumor: the existence of an archive that remembers everything humanity forgot. The Hall of Records. By the early 2000s, the narrow shafts inside the Great Pyramid and the hidden cavities around the Sphinx had been sealed after robotic probes completed their missions. The Upuwat 2 robot in 1993 and the JD probe in 2011 had both reached the small blocking stones inside the Queen's Chamber shafts. After those studies ended, engineers reinforced and closed the openings to protect the structure.
First time actually that you have a high-tech robot working with us archaeologists.
No one entered the shafts again, but the data they produced became the foundation for later research. Beginning in 2012, new international teams returned to Giza with better tools. Instead of physical excavation, they used ground-penetrating radar, muon tomography, and satellite-based imaging. These non-invasive methods allowed scientists to scan the surrounding rock and compare results with earlier readings. By 2023, the updated models showed that the sealed shafts, the rumored Hall of Records, and the newly discovered L-shaped anomaly beneath the Western Cemetery all shared the same orientation. The features appeared to belong to one continuous underground network running beneath the plateau. The idea of a Hall of Records had circulated for decades, a supposed chamber holding the knowledge of a civilization older than Egypt. For most scholars, it remained legend, until the new mapping confirmed that the location of this hall aligned perfectly with the L-shaped structure found during the 2021 to 2023 radar surveys. The accuracy of the alignment made coincidence unlikely. Supporting evidence came from a NASA radar satellite pass in the 1990s. The mission had recorded electromagnetic distortions over the same coordinates. The files were briefly public, then removed from the agency's archive. Copies reviewed by independent physicists show regular bursts of energy instead of random noise. When the data were graphed, the signals appeared organized, almost like code. This led some researchers to suggest that the records might not be scrolls or carvings, but a kind of data storage embedded in the rock itself. Quartz and crystalline minerals in the Giza bedrock can store electromagnetic energy, a principle used in modern electronics. Laboratory tests have detected faint repeating pulses in the same area, each lasting less than a second. The pulses repeat at regular intervals, as though the formation itself is still transmitting. To many scientists, this suggests that the Hall of Records could be a working system rather than a simple chamber. If that is true, opening it could activate something long dormant. Engineers have warned that the entire plateau might operate as a single connected mechanism. The closure of the shafts at the turn of the century may have been meant to prevent interference with that system, not merely to preserve the masonry. When data from all the surveys were combined, another striking pattern appeared. The internal chambers of the three pyramids matched key points in the subsurface network. In three-dimensional models, they form a lock, each chamber positioned where magnetic readings are strongest. The pyramids, long assumed to be tombs, may have been built to stabilize or contain the forces below. Recent radar tests deepened this concern. The pulses coming from beneath the plateau were no longer consistent reflections. Their timing changed slightly during every scan, indicating that the energy below was reacting rather than echoing. One technician described it simply, "It feels like we're speaking to it, and it's answering." Taken together, the evidence points to one conclusion that even skeptics find difficult to dismiss. The Giza Plateau may hide not only the remnants of an ancient power system, but the reason its builders buried it. Whether it is forgotten technology, a self-sustaining energy field, or proof of a civilization far older than recorded history, no one can yet explain it. What is certain is that the ancients sealed the shafts and built their monuments not as symbols of death, but as locks over something they believed must never be opened again. What do you think about this discovery? Comment down below.